right there, we're just going in the details of where I dremeled away with all the battle damage. And what this does is the chrome...
I could probably do that. Alright, so before I get started, I want to make sure everybody knows that this project was directly inspired by the work of a YouTuber named Cosplay Chris. If you haven't checked out his stuff, please do. And if you watch this video, even if you hate it, please go check out his stuff. A view for me should be a view for him. I wasn't even originally going to do this, but I saw this buzz for like less than $5 and I thought of Chris's project. I had to go with it. So let's take this guy, let's pop him out of the box. This is an inexpensive little miniature posable buzz. There's no electronics, no buttons, no helmet, no wings, none of that. It's just a plastic posable toy. The idea with this project is to make Buzz look as though he's been through some sort of intergalactic war or some sort of crazy space mission. So I'm going to be giving him some wear, some tears, some scratches, roughing him up a little bit, and exploring with some additives what would Buzz look like if he were struggling for survival in some sort of cataclysmic event. So as you can see, the first thing I'm doing here is going into my grandfather's old tackle box. He was a man who liked to collect things. Whenever I'm working on a project and I need a little piece of something, I can always find it in this box. Specifically here, I'm looking for something that Buzz might have been able to use as a makeshift repair for his laser, much like how Chris did. Something I can replace the wing activation button with. And considering that this Buzz has no wings, I'm wondering what it is that I can do to add to the jetpack part of Buzz. Maybe his wings are having trouble deploying and he has to rig up some sort of artificial ejection system. The parts I finally settled on consisted of an old frayed wire, the nozzle end of something that I think was once either a syringe or a superglue tube, this pin with a red plastic grip on the end of it, this red plastic cap with an old plastic gasket washer, and then I found these two metal brackets that I'm going to attempt to use to upgrade the wings. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to snip off the end of that syringe thing and I'm going to take the needle and push it through the hole. Once that's done, I'm just going to snip off the end of the needle using pliers. Next is the dremeling process. I'm taking the wheel attachment on the Dremel and artistically placing scratches on Buzz's suit. Not just sticking them willy-nilly, but trying to artistically and aesthetically place them in spots that would indicate that Buzz is exerting himself. The knees, the elbows, the shoulders, the chest, the edges of the feet. The key here is to not make him look like a toy who was left outside, but rather like a person who has been battling through the end of the world. Now this is a surprisingly important part of the process. I'm taking an orange, specifically a blood orange, the red kind, and I'm using the file from earlier to make a small incision and peeling the whole thing. Once the whole thing is peeled, I'm pulling it apart into pieces and eating the pieces. This part was by no means necessary, but I wanted to close Buzz's hand. He's got one closed hand and one open hand in this figure, and I wanted them to be symmetrical, so I'm just heating it up and bending it with pliers. Then I'm taking modeling acrylic in chrome silver and I'm going through and correcting the colors. All the spots on Buzz that should be silver, the paint job on this guy isn't super detailed, so I'm going through and making sure those sections get the colors they need. Then I'm spilling it. It's very important to spill it. Make sure you spill it so that you really get a good look at that color. Fun fact, modeling acrylic comes off with Windex. Surprisingly, the more you know. Next, I'm experimenting with some different washes. I would prefer Create Effects acrylic wash, but I really wanted to make sure I shopped locally for this, and they didn't have it. This is a brown water-based wash. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but I'm going to give it a try. This is supposed to get in all those scratches I made earlier, as well as the crevices of Buzz's suit, and really give it some age. So because this is water-based, it didn't work exactly how I had hoped, so I'm not going to be using much of it, but I'm going to keep some on hand to add a little extra dimension and color later on. What I ended up using the most of was Panel Line Accent Color. It's the same brand as the modeling acrylic that I use, and this was much more potent. Painting a nice informal but even coat over the entire suit, waiting about 8-10 minutes, and then rubbing it off with a rag. I went back and added more of this stuff at least 4 or 5 times. Before I go back in with the chrome silver and apply some exposed metal, I'm going to go ahead and apply the additives from the tackle box. Using the tip of my hot glue gun, I'm going to go in and just make a little divot on Buzz's upper arm where the end of the wire is going to go. Then connecting the other part of that wire to the little syringe laser piece, gluing that to Buzz's lower arm where his old laser was. Gluing on those brackets. And then the washer and the cap for his new button. The button on that suit was really small and kind of wimpy. I wanted to make sure that I replaced it with something a little bit more robust. Now I'm taking the thinnest brush that I have and going through, taking the same chrome silver and just placing a teeny bit in the deepest part of the crack. I'm then going to sections of the suit that, regardless of whether or not they were scratched with the Dremel or the file, they are sections where it makes sense that there would be wear and tear. Hypothetically, if Buzz was a real person and had a suit, it would be made of metal and painted. So it makes sense that when Buzz gets scratched, the surface underneath is raw metal. And also by now you may have noticed that I ended up taking the brackets off of the jetpack. I was having trouble getting them to adhere. I wasn't thrilled with the way that they looked, so in the end I ended up just popping them off. Once I'm done with that step, I'm moving on to rust. Rust is really going to add another dimension to this piece. All I'm doing is taking regular acrylic paint, mixing together a little bit of brown, red, and yellow till it gets to a color that I like, using that same small brush and going in and sneaking it into places where it might be. This is kind of the opposite of the scratching process because you're not looking for places that would get a lot of wear and tear. You're looking for places that are a little bit more hidden, places that are harder to clean, places where condensation would build up and cause rust, making a little ginger jagged line and then smudging it with the edge of my finger. This is another tip that I took from Chris's rendition. It may seem kind of silly, but it's really going to make it look like Buzz has been using that jetpack to an exhaustive extent. Now this is a textured spray paint. It's meant to simulate the surface of stone, but it's great for making things a little bit more textured and capturing to the eye, as well as simulating actual dirt. Taking a dark red color and adding a little bit of dimension to the mouth, kind of like what I did in my original Buzz restoration video. And then I'm using 100% acetone to take off Buzz's little chin swirl thing and going in for the new face up. I'm going to try to make Buzz look a little bit rugged here by adding some darkness and depth around the eyes and the corners of the mouth and nose, just making him look a little grisly. I'm also using a fine tip Sharpie to attempt to give him some 5 o'clock shadow. I'm really not trying to go too crazy with this. I want it to look subtle, and once that's done, I'm mixing up a paint that is slightly warmer than Buzz's given skin tone, and I'm stippling it over the 5 o'clock shadow, as well as on his cheeks, nose, and the middle of his forehead. This is going to brighten up his face a little bit and make sure that he still looks friendly. I wouldn't want him to look menacing. I want to mount this figure on a base. And for that, I'm actually taking inspiration from the Buzz Lightyear coin bank from the 90s. And just to show that you can really use almost anything for your art, this is a 50-cent cereal bowl that I got from Target. First thing I'm doing is making sure I get rid of all the artificial marks on the bottom where it says dishwasher safe and stuff, sanding that, heating it up with my torch lighter, and roughing it up a little bit. I'm going to be using my torch lighter a lot. If you are younger, please don't do this. You have to be very careful when you do this. You have to wear a mask. Just be smart, be safe. To simulate the appearance of craters, I heat up the bowl one section at a time and push something circular into it to make a crater. I used a cologne cap, a couple different pens, a couple different markers, and the butt end of my screwdriver. And also, because I'm taking inspiration from the Buzz coin bank, I actually want to make this into a coin bank, putting a coin slot in it by heating up that section of it and pushing a ruler through where I want the slot to go. Once the bowl's cooled down, I'm taking that textured spray paint and spraying the whole surface. When that dries, I'm taking purple acrylic paint and covering the whole thing. We're in the home stretch here and I'm doing a final stint of detail work. A little bit of color correcting here, the black on the shoulder sockets, the green on the bottom of the shoes, the purple karate chop action button on the back of the jetpack, anything else that needs to be done. Taking a little bit of black acrylic and dry brushing the base to make it look a little bit more rustic and match Buzz, really. One last time with the accent color. And finally, the finishing touch, attaching to the base. Okay, I think I've done it. Now let us see what I've done. Well, if you're hearing this, it means you've wasted another perfectly good chunk of time watching one of my videos. Thanks for doing that, it really helps me out. If you would like to own this, you can. It's going up for auction, link is in the description. 20% of my proceeds go to charity every time. This time around it's St. Jude's. I love St. Jude's. St. Jude's is great. Everybody should donate to St. Jude's. They're not a sponsor, I just think they're amazing. They make kids' lives better, which is what toys are meant to do. So it only makes sense that I give to them. Thank you to Cosplay Chris for inspiring me. Like I said before, if you haven't checked him out, what are you waiting for, you big silly? If you're interested in following me on other forms of social media, the ingredients for those things are down below. As always, if you like what we did here, there's a neato little button that says subscribe. If you hit it, we can do this again, and again, and again. I'll see you in the next one, and if anybody asks, just tell them Duane made it.